he said, have you ever attended a St. Luke's healing service? And I said, no. He said, well, I'm a member of the Order of St. Luke. He said, every October the 18th, we're at whatever church I'm in, it doesn't matter what day of the week October 18th falls, we have a service right here. And he said, you'd be welcome to come. And given that I'd gotten to know him a little bit, I felt I would go. And sure enough, I went to his church, and it was a Thursday, and it was in the evening, and they hadn't turned all the lights on, and it was very dark. I think there were about 12 of us there, not too many. But he was very in tune with the theme. And I learned, as he chatted with us, a lot about St. Luke. That was the theme of the whole service. Some of it I knew, some of it was new to me. So let's just start with the parts that are relatively familiar, which I think many of you know. St. Luke was a Gentile, as was mentioned, a Gentile. Meaning that when the Jesus movement, which was called the Way, began, it was a collection of people, but mostly it was Jews, right? Jesus was a Jew, and most of the disciples were Jewish, and most of the movement was Jewish. However, there was a sizable number, obviously, of Gentiles who participated and joined. And it's significant that Luke was a Gentile because his gospel talks and is themed, for the most part, with this notion of how Gentiles become part of something where there was some questions about whether or not you had to follow particular Jewish rituals and practices to become part of this movement. He's attributed, Luke that is, with having written the Gospel of Luke, but also the book of Acts, which follows John's Gospel in your Bible. If you look at the Gospel of Luke and then you read the book of Acts, you will see the continuity, right? So Luke's Gospel is themed with this notion that God is using Jesus to bring people into the way, to follow Jesus and to be God's people. The book of Acts is a more, it demonstrates how we come together as church to live out this vision of how we are called to be. So if you will, the Gospel of Luke is sort of a philosophy, an outlook, a way of thinking about being the church, and the book of Acts is about how we actually do it. It's the practical idea of being together as community. The other thing that we think we know about Luke is that he was a physician, which lends itself, again, to this idea that healing is so important. And if you look at the stories in the Gospel of Luke, many of them at their core are about healing. And something I didn't know until I went that night is half of the parables in the Bible are in the Gospel of Luke. Now that I did not know. Meaning that Luke places a high emphasis on storytelling as a means to understand healing. In other words, healing isn't just an abstract idea that you're hurting and suddenly you feel well. There is also the aspect of when you hear a story, often you are triggered to understand yourself in that story, either as the person who is being healed, or as the person doing the healing, or in an uncomfortable way, one of the people who is part of, if you will, what has afflicted the other. That is to say that in the stories that Luke tells, there are essentially three kind of agents going on. There is the agency of healing, there is the agency of being healed, and there are those who stand in the way. who are actively resisting whatever it is that's going on. And all of us have been in all three places at some time in our life. And therefore, as we hear these parables, these stories, we can listen to the story at various times in our life. When we feel vulnerable, when we feel hurt, when we feel wounded, we can identify with the person in the parable, like in the prodigal son, or in the lost sheep, right? Or in the Good Samaritan. We can identify with the one who is wounded. Or if we are feeling our strength of agency, our discipleship, pulsing through our veins, we really want to be God's hands, healing hands in the world, we can hear those stories and say, that's me. I'm jumping in the ditch. I'm the shepherd looking for the lost sheep, right? I'm the father who is throwing the party for the son, right? We can have those. Or we can hear the story and say, uh-oh. The Pharisees don't look good in that story. And I kind of think that's me. Oops, right? There's a discomfort that comes with that. I was at the funeral for Hugh Creighton, who some of you know, last Saturday. Yeah? And the minister of the church, when he was doing the blessing at the end of the blessing, he was saying, may all of this be a blessing to you. And he said, as he ended his blessing, may some of these words make you uncomfortable. So therefore, as you are in your discomfort, you may be healed and heal. I thought, I like that. That's not something our culture is used to, right? Yes? We always think of healing as something that makes us comfortable. But sometimes things that move us out of our comfort zone actually begin to heal. I think we all know that's true. So Luke was converted in Antioch by Paul when he came into the community and preached about what God had done. So again, Luke is influenced by Paul, who has had a healing experience of what God can do. And in Paul's transformation, he realizes, Paul does, that he has been not a healer, but someone who has brought hurt and harm to others. And in that moment when he realizes who he is and what he's been doing, he loses his sight, he goes down, scales on his eyes, and only later, after a long period of not being able to see or speak, does he emerge as a new man with a new name and a new vocation. That's Paul. And as a result of that change in Paul, he is able to tell his story, his personal story, his testimony, if you will. I don't know if we have any evangelicals here today, but it tells his story, which in turn influences Luke, right? To in turn absorb and say, I want to be part of that. I want to join that movement. I want to become, if this is who Jesus is, I want that. I want to be part of the way. And so Luke joins as a physician. But what's interesting, and this is so important in church world, is that not everybody has to absorb the story in the same way. In other words, Luke doesn't just become a mini Paul. He doesn't go out into the community and talk about what a wretch he has been and how terrible he was, and now he's great. I was terrible and now I'm great. Because that story does exist, and I know lots of people for whom that is their story. But there are also lots of people who are Luke, who are people who feel, I didn't do that many terrible things, I didn't torture people. I didn't put people in jail. But you know what? I still want that. That is what I want. What that man has, I want. I want to be part of this movement of healing and love and connection. I want that. And so Luke becomes part of it, and he tells his story in his way, which is different than Paul's. Paul's story is very much, You're here, and with God's help, you can go there. And by the way, that is good news, because I know lots of people who are here, and they need to know that they can go from here to here. It's good news. So for all my mainline church friends, it's a good story. It's a good story. But it's not everybody's story. Did you hear that? For my evangelical friends, it's not everybody's story. Did you hear that? Every once in a while, I ride the bus with someone who's a Christian, right? And they'll ask me what I do, and I tell them, I'm a minister. And they'll say, great! And they'll say, oh, when were you converted? And I'll say, I don't know. What do you mean? Don't you got a date and a time? Nope, I don't. Not everybody tells that story. So in Luke's story, he's a physician, he's healing people, but there's something missing. And he joins the movement as a Gentile, and he sees what the Gentiles are lacking. And he sees what Jesus is offering. And he taught, through his own life story, he tells the story of healing. And what is the story of healing? Well, if you think about Luke's unique lens of healing, it's almost always hospitality, right? So if you think of and forgiveness, yeah? What is the story that Mavis just read to us, right? It's the idea that when you come into a town, you enter with humility. You receive what people offer. You come as an agent of love, but you come not in any way to be a wolf. Do you like that? Wolf. You're not a wolf. You are one who comes in as a lamb. You come with humility. You come to learn. You come to be. You accept what people offer. But you are an agent of Jesus. You are an agent of love. You can heal. Yes, you can. Everyone in this church can be an agent of healing. You can. You have been. You will be an agent of healing. But no, not as a wolf. What do I mean by that? Healing is being with. We had our muffin club earlier today, and we learned that in the word compassion, calm means being with. Compassion, being with. And so often we forget that when we are offering ourselves as healers, the most important thing we can be is with one another. There are times we're all mortal. I was reading one of the commentators on Luke's gospel on healing. And healing is not cure, although it can be, right? But I have news for everyone in this church, and it's hard news, and I want you to know that I'm not saying this with any meanness. We're all going to die. Do you know that? So any healing is temporary. We're all going to die. And as a result of that, healing is not about curing ourselves permanently. It's about moving to a place where we can live in life with love and spirit and joy. That's it. And so coming amongst each other as lambs is offering ourselves to each other in a humble, loving, being with way. Coming at people and saying, this is my experience, and so now you must all be just like me. Want to be healed? Listen to me, right? Well, there are people like that. Yeah, there are gurus, TED Talk people. I get that, right? But most of us are not those people. Most of the healing that we do with each other is simply being with. So if we can stop being wolves and be sheep, we might get a little further along, yeah? Sometimes when we're with others, there are times I'm with people. I had someone in my office this week. out of the blue, just dropped in. Didn't know the person, just dropped in. And told me that she had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Right? My age. What do you say? We sat and we talked. And at the very end, I'm sitting at my desk, and Louisa has just dropped off a prayer shawl for me, sitting right there. And the person I'm looking at is wearing black, top to bottom, and the prayer shawl is black. And I said, aha. And so at the very end, I said, I offer no prescription. I don't have a magic prayer that will make you live. I pray that there will be a miracle. I believe in miracles, but I have no certainty. I offer no certainty. I'm not a wolf. I offer myself. You can drop in any time. We can be together whenever you want. But I do offer this shawl. It was made by someone in this church with love. And if you'd like, we can wrap it around your shoulders and we can pray. Yes, she said, I'd like that. And that's what we did. Did she become cured? I don't know. Did she feel healed and healing? I think so. Healing, from Luke's point of view, is about being with. It's about welcome. It's about hospitality. It's about, and this goes back to what Mavis read, it's about the idea that the kingdom is near. The kingdom is not in the sweet by and by in the clouds above the sky. Right? The kingdom is here. And if the kingdom is here, and we are broken and we are lost, reminding people that we are all in this together, that we are all sisters and brothers connected in this mystical communion, well, it's something. And it's a lot more than you imagine. I'll leave you with this last word. Rodney Stark is a sociologist. He wrote a book on the early church. The church that existed after Jesus' resurrection. And in that moment of history, the church was an illegal institution. Did you hear that? The Roman Empire was trying to destroy the church. It had no tax. The early church didn't have a tax number. It worshiped in people's houses. It was a nomadic movement. It had no norms. It was simply a group of people who worshiped Jesus, period. And in that time, as an illegal institution, do you know what? It grew so unbelievably large that the Roman Empire had to adopt it. Constantine had to convert because he could see that the movement was getting so big. If you can't beat them, join them, right? And so what I'm telling you is the church grew in spite of it being illegal. And why did it grow? And this is where Rodney Stark comes in, the sociologist. He says, of all of the institutions in that time period, the church was the one place that if you were a person who was dying, you could go and people would not judge you or try to stay away from you. They would be with you until you died. Period. And guess what? People came in droves. Because in that culture, there was no place to go. And broken people came together. And we, 2,000 years, have put ourselves out there as a church of power and prestige, and we've lost sometimes, we've presented ourselves to the world as wolves, but we are sheep. And our healing is humble. May we be with. May we be with. And may God be with us and show us the way. Amen.